Welcome to Module 3 of the MELI Units Data Collection Methods course. In this module, we will introduce you to the basics of survey development, including key survey design decisions, key considerations for survey questions, question selection and placement, and survey administration. Let's get started. When developing a survey, there are some key design decisions you'll need to make as you get started. First is your survey's purpose and main question, or questions. You'll want to identify a clear purpose for your survey. Clearly articulating the purpose and key questions your survey will provide answers to will then inform the rest of your survey design. Questions to ask yourself when developing a survey goal are: what am I trying to understand? Why do I want to know? What do I hope to do with the data once I'm done? What kinds of reports or data do I need? And how are we going to access the target audience? Next is the respondent group or groups. These are the people who will be taking your survey. Keeping your target demographic in mind at every stage of your survey development will ensure that questions are phrased accurately. You'll then want to look at the mechanics and timing of your data collection. How will the survey be distributed? Ask yourself, electronic versus in-person? Which platform will you use? Etc. Also consider the timing of when you administer the survey. Will you send the survey at a certain time period after the exchange ends? Perhaps at the conclusion of a workshop? Once you've thought about all of these facets of a survey, you can start writing survey questions. You'll want to create and prioritize questions based on the purpose, audience, and other design decisions. One thing we haven't discussed is the length of a survey. When considering survey length, understand audience and motives. Too many questions can lead to biased data, and balance audience profile and survey goals. And finally is testing. We recommend doing this both internally and externally, with a few members of your targeted respondent group if possible. Plan for reviewing and testing your survey before it is sent out to your full respondent group. This allows you to discover practical problems, assess question interpretation, assess clarity of instructions, ensure ethics requirements are met, and ensure survey displays correctly. In this course, we're going to take a closer look at key considerations for survey questions, question selection and placement, and survey administration. Start with key considerations for survey questions. Carefully consider the construction of your questions. There are a variety of different types of questions you can use: closed-ended versus open-ended, single select versus multi-select, scales, and others. And each has their pros and cons and how they're used. Let's look at a few question types and some examples. First, let's take a look at closed-ended versus open-ended questions. Closed-ended refers to any question for which respondents are provided with options from which to choose a response. This category includes all of our other question types: multiple choice, ranking, Likert, etc. For example, asking, "Are you an ECA alum?" and providing yes or no as response options is a closed-ended question. Alternatively, open-ended refers to any questions to which respondents can respond with free text entry. For example, asking which ECA program are you an alum of and allowing respondents to write in their own answer is an open-ended question, though one we probably would not recommend using. Now let's look at a few of the more common closed-ended question types, starting with multiple choice. Multiple choice refers to questions that allow respondents to select one or more options from a list of answers that are predefined. There are two main types of multiple choice questions. Asking, have you traveled abroad? And providing the choice between yes or no response options is an example of a single select question. Alternatively, asking, for what purpose have you traveled abroad? And providing a list of response options from which a respondent can select any that apply to them is an example of a multi-select question. Rating scale refers to questions that display a scale of answer options from any range and asks the respondent to select the number that most accurately represents their response. For example, asking, please rate your effectiveness as a leader from 1, not at all effective, to 5, very effective. And finally, Likert scale refers to questions that provide respondents a range of options to choose from, often ranging from negative to positive options. Likert scales can, but do not necessarily have to, include a neutral midpoint such as neither agree nor disagree for respondents that do not hold a positive or negative opinion on a particular topic. For example, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? I enjoyed my exchange program experience. Strongly disagree, disagree, agree, and strongly agree. Sometimes a survey will incorrectly use the same response scale types for all questions. Doing this may result in confused respondents and invalid data. For instance, a common error is using a 5-point Likert scale that represents agreement, but framing the question in terms of quality, frequency, or amount. Matching the nature of the questions and response scales ensures that the questions are being asked appropriately. For example, asking, I regularly use my leadership skills with an agree to disagree scale. This is a question about frequency and cannot be answered with the traditional Likert type scale because the definition of regularly differs from person to person. For questions dealing with frequency, it would be better to use a scale that has the options of always, often, sometimes, and never. The better way to phrase this question would be, please rate the extent to which you agree with the following question. How frequently do you use your leadership skills? Be as specific as possible when asking questions to ensure you get useful data from your survey. However, you also want to make sure you strive for clear and precise language when writing your survey questions. For example, in the question, how many workshops did you participate in during FY23? There are a couple of issues. First, you want to avoid ambiguity when phrasing your question. In this example, what workshops are we referencing? Any workshop they may have taken? Or are we looking for something more specific? Avoid any ambiguity and provide clarification within the question. For example, by specifying civic engagement workshops. And second, you want to avoid acronyms and technical jargon. In this example, that would be FY23 in reference to fiscal year 2023. If you need to ask a respondent about fiscal year, you should write fiscal year and then have the definition October 1st through September 30th in the survey as well. But better yet, you probably want to avoid references to fiscal year altogether. Ask about one concept at a time. No double-barreled questions. A double-barreled question is a question that touches upon two different issues, but only allows for a single answer. Including grammatical conjunctions like and or in a question typically means that it's double-barreled. For example, this is a double-barreled question. Did you find the workshop satisfying and engaging? The use of the word and is a clue that it's double-barreled. You want to ask about concepts separately. So the best thing to do is to ask two separate questions. One to find out how the respondent found the workshop in terms of satisfaction, and one asking about the level of engagement in the workshop. Avoid biased or leading or loaded questions. Some descriptive words and phrases may interject bias into your questions or influence the respondent in answering a certain way. Leading questions lead respondents to answer a certain way, and loaded questions contain assumptions about someone's behavior and perceptions. For example, you wouldn't simply want to ask a yes or no question saying, "Did you find the workshop engaging?" as it is framed in a way that pushes respondents to choose yes. A more neutral phrasing would be to ask, "To what extent did you find the workshop engaging?" and then providing a response scale. Additionally, a question like, "The workshop was exceptionally satisfying," with an agree to disagree scale, contains strongly positive wording that can influence a respondent's answer. A more neutral phrasing would be something like, "Overall, how satisfied were you with this workshop?" with a not at all to very satisfied scale. Always be sure to include question instructions. Different types of questions require different instructions. Please select the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statements below, which you might use for a Likert scale question. Please select one response, which is common for single select questions. Please select all that apply, which you might want to consider for a multi-select question. Now let's take a look at question selection and placement. When determining the question placement, ask yourself, which questions are most important? Remember that there will always be respondents who do not complete the survey, so we generally want our more important questions up front in the hopes that most people will answer those. Which questions are quick to answer? Which take more time? This is especially relevant to open-ended questions, which take more time to answer and can hurt your response rate if there are too many and they appear toward the beginning of the survey. Which questions address sensitive issues? We never want to open a survey by asking about sensitive topics, which can include asking for sensitive demographic information. Generally, we want to start with easy-to-answer questions. Is there a logical flow? We want people to answer questions in an order that will make some kind of logical sense to the respondent. Generally speaking, the question order you'll want to follow is general to specific, positive to negative, and ask yourself, which questions address potentially negative or sensitive issues? We never want to open a survey by asking more negatively oriented questions. And finally, easy to hard. Which questions are quick to answer? This will most likely be your closed-ended questions. Which take more time? This will include your open-ended questions. And we'll wrap up by looking at survey administration. Our first administration consideration is, what timing makes the most sense? Should the survey be sent immediately post-program? A year later? This will vary based on whether you want to document outcomes that are immediately apparent or take time to manifest. You'll also want to consider the timing of other data collection activities, events, upcoming holidays, etc. Administering during or close to a holiday or major event, or during another major data collection effort for your evaluation, or the program that your target audience is also being asked to participate in, can negatively impact your response rates. Who is the best messenger? Response rates are generally higher when surveys are sent from a person or office that is well known by the target audience. And lastly, will we send follow-ups? Follow-up emails are one of the best tools for boosting response rates. When sending follow-up reminders, you'll want to be persistent without being annoying, remind respondents of the value of their feedback, and personalize the emails whenever possible. In accordance with industry best practices, MELI surveys aim for a minimum response rate of 60%. There are, of course, a number of factors that can affect your response rate and whether 60% is even a reasonable response rate to shoot for. all of which we discuss in greater detail in our data analysis and reporting course. And that's it for our module on survey development. When you're ready, you can head back to the training overview and move on to Module 4 on qualitative data collection. We'll see you there.